Hey everybody, Mags here. We are going to review some of the hints and tips that we've been given this year on the Dynasty Hot Seat. If you are new here, do me a favor, can you like, comment, share on this video for me, please, like you can see here. And then also if you're new here, why not hit that subscribe button too? It really helps out. Right, on to the hints and tips.
Yeah, so my tips. I come from an investments background. So largely what I try and do in the fantasy football space is to take those investment concepts that I've learned over time and apply them to fantasy football.
Awesome.
And the first one I wanted to talk about was the concept of value. And in investing, in value investing, it's just about buying something for less than its fundamental value is. Value sometimes gets a bad rap because a lot of people think it just means buying like the cheapest assets out there or something at a lower price asset. But it's really not about that. It's about the price you pay versus what that asset is worth. There's lots of different ways that fantasy football people look at value in the space. One way I particularly like is wins above replacement or WAR. And there's many, many other options out there to think about value. But I came up with my own particular way to do it, taking some of those investments concepts and applying it to this fantasy football. First, before I get started there, one thing I wanted to get out of the way here is price is what you pay for something and value is what you get from something. And this is one of the most important pieces that I think people don't quite get right. Price and value are not the same thing. Price is what you pay to get that fantasy player, whether that's ADP or when you're trading, if you're using trade calculators, that the KTC price or whatever. And value is what that player is fundamentally worth. So the premise for my development of value here is that fantasy players' value should be based on the relationship between a player's price and his earnings or his PE ratio. I'm not sure if you heard of PE ratio before. That's something you use in the investment world. So in my example, applying it to fantasy football, price is the number assigned to him on keep, trade, cut, or his KTC. And fantasy points on a per game basis, the PPG for the player, is the player's earnings. So if you put it together, his PE ratio, his price to earnings ratio, equals his KTC price divided by his points per game. And that would be his measure of value. And then you take that PE ratio and on a relative basis, you compare it to other similar assets on a like-for-like basis. And the one with the lower PE ratio is the one that you're getting a better value from. You're getting more points for the amount of price you have to pay for that. And the best way to look at that, to use that PE, is looking at within positions, and you can set it up in tiers or clusters, but the point is you're looking for like. You can't use PE ratios of Tom Brady versus Justin Fields. It makes it tough to do that. But when you're looking at Justin Fields versus Trey Lance or Trevor Lawrence, then you can kind of get an idea of what PE can help you when you're trying to pick between the two. So that's my first tip. I'll encourage you to read more about that in the Intelligent Investor series on Dynasty Nerds if you're interested in that topic.
Yeah, absolutely. That is really, really fascinating to me. I love like how you've taken your expertise in like one area and just, applied it into here. And, the great thing about, fantasy football is you can, dig into, almost an infinite amount of stats and numbers and, things that have different correlations. And, I think you've done a really good job with that and just finding, those nuggets of value and those sort of golden players like, off the top of my head, you people like your Brandon Cookses and people like that who, their price and their value, are completely, skewed a little bit. You get those players like that, all the time, and finding people like that is so important for, building these championship teams. So I absolutely love that. I really do encourage people to get over and read those articles that are up on Dynasty Nerds, and you can just head over to Jess Twitter to find them really quickly. So what a brilliant first tip. What else have you got for us for tip number 2?
Yeah, appreciate that. So the next tip here, And Connor, I hope it's okay. I got even more than 3, so hopefully that's good too.
Oh,
but
bring them all. I mean, I need all the help I can get. I know that.
So the second one I got here is a good player versus a good investment. We spent a ton of time trying to figure out who the good players are, who the bad or mediocre players are. And I agree that is an incredibly valuable process to understand who is going to be good and who is going to be bad. But objectively, a good player does not necessarily mean that he is a good investment. If that good player is acquired for less than his fundamental value, then yeah, he's probably a good investment. But that's just it. Good players can be good investments or bad investments. They can be either. One of the best ways to create value in Dynasty Fantasy Football is to correctly identify valuable rookie players as they come into the league. So here's an example. In last year, using Superflex ADP, you had to use pick 1.06 to acquire Najee Harris in your rookie drafts. So when you're thinking about price for that, that's about $5,000 when it comes to KTC. And Harris is now at a KTC price of around $6,500. So his price appreciated about 30%. Now, whatever your views are on what Najee Harris is, a good player or maybe a mediocre player that has an offense that gives him a lot of volume, that's not really the point. The point is that in May of last year, he was a great value. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he's a great value right now. And I venture to tell you that, looking at PEs, that maybe he isn't at the moment.
Yeah.
So that's the next tip there. Good player versus good investment. Good players can be both a good investment or a bad investment, depending on what the price you're paying is.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely great advice as well. Like, it's maybe sometimes easy to get caught up in, this, especially, now as well with like kind of people in the rookie fever a little bit. Like people are like, oh, I need to get Christian Watson, or I need to get, Sky Moore on my team. And then it's just overpaying for that pick. Or, people are like, oh, I need to get Najee Harris after that. And, people aren't going to accept that price that it was, at the start of last year. You're not going to get Najee Harris for pick 1-6 in this draft. But then does that mean that you should go out and pay 2 first for Najee? Maybe not. I love that. Yeah, you have to look at each thing in a separate kind of vacuum of value and price and value. Yeah, I think I'm definitely going to start using those 2 terms, a lot more, and I look at them as 2 separate things. So I really like that as a second tip. So you got tip number 3 for us as well now, Jay. What do you have for us?
Yeah, tip number 3. So this one is a concept called compounding. So investing, compounding basically means making money on money. A lot of people think about it as compound interest. You learn about it in school.
Yeah.
It's also creating wealth. Having your wealth to create more wealth. So wealth on wealth.
Yeah.
And in Dynasty Fantasy Football, it's also possible to compound your wealth as well. The way to do that is to trade down the price curve and accumulate draft picks while you're not giving up too much production-wise. So you have 2 assets that are fairly similar. One has a very high price and one has a very more reasonable price. You trade the high price one for a reasonable price one, collect your draft pick, and you're not giving up too much from a production or opportunity perspective. So where you're creating the most value there is you're accumulating draft picks or plus more, whatever it is. Draft picks are almost always rising in price until you use them. They never get hurt and are a common medium of exchange, i.e. there's always a market for them.
Yeah.
And the best part is now that you have a guaranteed appreciating asset, you can use those assets to create more wealth for your dynasty team. So just to kind of put a bow on it here, if you can find undervalued players with similar production or outlook to yours that are cheaper in price, you can trade your player for the cheaper player plus more. Then you can use that plus more to create more wealth for your team. And so that's kind of a concept that I like to use in Dynasty Fantasy Football as one way to go about it.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And, that can be done like using a lot of people come on here and talked about, the importance of, not just having rankings, but actually using like tiers So if you can trade back for someone in the same tier and then get that, that bonus just like for free, essentially, then yeah, you're playing with house money, and that's great. That's something I wish, we'd be able to sort of play around with in the future on the show. When people are doing their drafts, we'd be able to get a feature where you can actually trade those picks in that mock draft tool. That would add an extra little wrinkle that would be cool into the show. So yeah, I love that as your third tip. And now you got some bonus tips for us as well.
Bonus.
Yes.
Yeah. And just to add on to that, I mean, that you're just mentioning, Kyle Pitts, no matter what your view is on him or not, his price is so high. It's silly not to take him, even if you don't have a very good outlook for him, and then you trade him for Mark Andrews plus. I mean, there's so many opportunities. Always be looking for trying to compound. Always be compounding.
Yeah. Kyle Pitts' value is so high. I literally have never tried to buy him off someone because I don't want to see what will come back my way. So only shares of Kyle Pitts I have are the ones I've drafted. I've never tried to buy him. Yeah.
And then it's really fun to be on the other side because you see all these, ridiculous trades out there that you get to reap the rewards from that if you want to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tip number 4, the title on this one's keep calm and carry on, or emotional stability here. And so the point here is markets are pretty efficient, but they're not completely efficient. And a lot of that has to do with people not acting rationally. And the one I want to talk about was the pendulum effect. So when investors are not acting rationally, they create a pendulum effect of euphoria and depression. So it's a boom or a bust. Once the pendulum is swinging, the asset's price will likely move too far one way or the other. This causes the market to over or underprice assets frequently. The pendulum effect happens all the time in fantasy football. For example, I'm going to give you an example of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. A rookie running back drafted in the first round. Then the team that drafted him has an excellent offense with no competition at the position. The price of the rookie skyrockets before he even plays it down in the NFL. It's pure euphoria. The market pendulum swings too far to the positive, and that same player has a couple mediocre seasons riddled with some injuries or poor circumstances. That player's price plummets. It's depression. The pendulum probably swings too far in the negative direction. The point here is that a player's price is probably somewhere in the middle of the pendulum price swings. And value can be created if you take advantage of those extreme market prices. So you buy players when the pendulum swings too far to the negative, and you sell players when the pendulum swings too far to the positive. So that was number 4. And then I'll do get further into my bonus here a little bit.
Fantastic.
So as I said before, a good way to create value is to hit on rookie picks. And the best way to hit on rookie picks is to be familiar with them before they get to the league. And the best way, I think, to be familiar with them before they get to the league is to participate in Devy leagues, campus to Canton leagues, or college fantasy football leagues. Even if it's not high stakes, just getting in there and getting familiar with these guys and having a general understanding of who they are and how good they are is going to be tremendously helpful for when you do your rookie drafts and you see them enter the league. So I'd recommend getting started right away in some of those types of leagues if you aren't already. And if you need help, I know it'll make you become a better Dynasty player. If you need help getting started or finding leagues, over at Dynasty Nerds, we'll help you do that, and you can reach out, and I'd be happy to help as well.
That's really cool. Like I'm certainly not in any Devy leagues myself even, and it's something like I've been thinking about joining. And I was even thinking, and maybe some listeners as well, it's like, where do you even go? Like, can you do Devy on Sleeper? Can you do Devy on Flea Flick? What do you need to be able to do Devy? What is the kind of setup, or is there certain websites you need to go to?
Oh yeah, I can help you answer all those questions. I think that's an awesome idea. We should set up a Dynasty Hotseat Devy League.
Yes,
I'll commission it for you if you want to do it.
Yeah, I'm up for that,
and we can get it going.
Yeah, man.
And then one last thing, just because we're getting into the almost to the where the seat gets really hot and I'm not sure if I'll remember it when we get there, but I just wanted to go through my setup here real quick. So these are some of the things I like to have on hand when I'm doing my draft. I like their rankings, tiers, or clusters, whatever your flavor is, and I like to compare that to what we're seeing on ADP. I also like to keep KTC open, or you can do whatever your favorite dynasty calculator is.
Yeah.
But I just like to have a good idea of what prices are as I'm scrolling through the ADP and what the tiers are, just so I can understand what's kind of falling, if there's high price players that are falling. Like KTC, the pricing on Jalen Waddle is really high right now compared to what your rankings show or what's on ADP at Dynasty Nerds.
Yeah.
And so just kind of have an understanding that if I draft him, I could sell him for a lot more than if I get him later in the draft. And the other thing I have open is the RLADS depth charts. You can look at whatever your favorite source is for depth charts, but I like to have a good idea of what the situation is as I'm selecting players, especially when I get to the later rounds into 15 and 16. And it gives you a good idea, and that they make projections of if rookies are going to be, where they're going to be in the depth charts and as such. And just, some rules while I'm going through in the draft is, I'm looking for players that are undervalued or overvalued while I go through this. Not exactly looking for the ones that are exactly valued.
Yeah.
And the reason is the undervalued ones, I'm looking for price appreciation. The overvalued ones, I'm thinking about what I can trade.
Yeah.
How I can compound them. So, taking the Kyle Pitts, how I make that into Mark Andrews plus more, whatever they are. So, as we go through this draft, sometimes, you might question like, oh man, that guy's pretty overvalued. I wouldn't pay that price for him. But what I'm thinking about is, well, that's a high price. What can I get for him on the other side of it, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Thinking about, like we've had last week, even just Ali was saying, it's like, you need to remember, like once the draft ends, those players are on your team. Like you can do whatever you want with them then. Like you're not drafting your starting lineup necessarily. Like you're drafting because you've got the future planned out. This is Dynasty. You got like years and years and years of these players. So yeah, you're not drafting your starting lineup. You're drafting your future lineup almost in a weird way. If that makes any sense.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
That is brilliant.
Thank you so much for watching today's video. Remember, like this video, leave a comment if you want, and subscribe to the channel. These videos are going to be coming thick and fast, so you don't want to miss anything. So that's it for today. In the meantime, keep your teams lit. We'll see you next time.